Recording now. This is lesson 2.1, understanding large numbers. Now, just a couple of reminders again before I continue with the recording. Remember to pause or stop the video at any time if you need to catch up with any note taking, as well as if there are opportunities, if you want to test yourself before I give you the answer, I encourage you to pause it. Remember, you can also rewind and replay parts that you didn't quite get. For this recording, you need this reference sheet in front of you, 2.1. You also need a pencil. Now, anything I write in anything I write in black on the recording, you should be writing in pencil. You also need a highlighter. Anything that I underline or draw specific attention to, you should also highlight on your page. Finally, if you wish to have a different colored pen or a pencil, when I use different colors, feel free to use different colors as well. Now let's get started. Looking at this place value chart, it should remind you of the place values of larger numbers you learned last year. Last year, I'm assuming that you went as far as the millions. This year, we will take it 2 periods higher. We will look at numbers in the billions, as well as look at numbers in the trillions. Let's start off with some vocabulary first. The first vocabulary word I'd like you to jot down on your page in pencil is period. A period, when we're talking about place values, it refers to a group of 3 numbers on a place value chart. This will become more clear to you when we write some notes on this reference chart. So I'm going to take a green pen. So this is where you can take a different colored pen if you want to. So we have 5 different periods on this chart. So our first period we have the units period. So the group of 3 numbers within the units belongs to the units period. We also have the thousands period. That's another period. So again, the group of 3 numbers. Now there may not necessarily always be 3 numbers because you could have perhaps 2 numbers under the thousands because you're going as far as only the 10,000. We're just referring to this category of numbers as the thousands period. Next, you have the millions period. Then you have the billions period. And finally, you have the trillions period. So again, we have 5 different periods on this place value chart. So let's practice using this place value chart and helping us organize how to say and how to line up numbers. Now, typically, a period has 3 numbers, as I mentioned before. We always want to separate numbers between periods with either a space or a comma. Now, I prefer spaces because it's not as messy as commas. So again, copy this down. We're going to start off with a couple of sample practice questions. So let's start off here. So notice where I'm writing it directly underneath its place in the place value chart. So how do you say this number? If you want to practice saying this number, I encourage you to pause the video now before I say the answer. Okay, so the answer is 224,312. Now, for any numbers in the units period that are with other numbers in other periods, we don't say units afterwards. So again, the answer is 224,312. Here's another example. Directly underneath, notice how I'm lining it up directly underneath. Again, pause the recording if you want to practice yourself. So again, typically we would have a space between the millions and the thousands period. So this bigger gap should be our space. So I will say the number. So this number is 12,912,653. Let's try one more, and now let's go as far as the billions category. Notice again, I'm lining it up directly underneath. Now, because this might get a little bit messy, I'm just gonna add in some lines here to distinguish between the numbers. Now, also too, the further we go down, this is where I would use a comma because you can't really see the distinction between the periods. Just be careful when you're using commas. My preference, again, are spaces, but in this case, I'm going to use commas. So here, again, pause the video if you want to figure out how to say this number on your own. We have 33,925,742,912. Some people make the mistake of saying 742,912. Avoid that because remember, and is reserved for a decimal point. More on that when we learn about small numbers as well. Now, going back to the vocabulary word of period, suppose I asked you a question, name the digits in the millions period. Well, the millions period in the last number consists of 3 numbers. So the digits in the millions period are 925, and that's what you would write down. If I asked you, write the digits in the units period, then you would only look at the 3 digits in the units period, which is 912. That's how you apply it in a question. Now, getting back to more vocabulary, you should have noticed on the side, and notice here, I'm going to block it off here in purple, and you should highlight that. Within each period, you have hundreds, tens, and ones. So remember, there are even more divisions within a period. So that's how I refer to 3 different numbers. So for example, I'm going to go with a new number here. So I'm going to go into the trillions category. And so it doesn't get too messy again, I'm going to draw another line here. Okay. So let's go with, oops. So that's a comma there. Notice again, I'm trying my best to line up numbers directly underneath the hundreds, tens, and ones category within each period. Okay, pause the video if you want to practice saying that number. Okay, so we're back up to the trillions, so that would be 1,124,556,925,646. Suppose I asked you, name the digit in the 10 billions category. I would name the 2, okay? Suppose I asked you, name the digit in the 100,000s category. I would ask for the 9, okay? Now, another potential question you may get from this lesson is naming the value of, say, the 2 in this number here. If I was referring to this 2, the value of this 2 is actually, because it's in the 10 billions category, it's 20. It would be 20 billion. So what you do is you look at where the 2 is, and you can count the number of zeros after it. So because, again, the 2 is in the 10 billions category, the value of that 2 is actually 20 billion. Okay, now you can pause, stop the recording as we have finished with the lesson.